Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Katrina's Creations. Today we are going to be doing a Dorset button tutorial. But before I get started, I do want to explain some of the history behind Dorset buttons. If you're not interested in seeing that history, I will put a timestamp down below here that you can skip ahead and go directly to the tutorial. Now, I did make this video a few years ago, but my technical experience wasn't really good, and neither was my camera at the time. But if you would like to see the original version, you can click on the little eye right here, and that will take you over to there. So let's get started with the history of Dorset button making. The Dorset area of England is where the name originates from for the Dorset buttons. And back in 1618, there was a man named Abraham Case who noticed that some of the soldiers were missing buttons off of their shirts and their uniforms, and they were twisting fabric together to replace the lost buttons. And this gave him the idea. So in 1622, he was living in Dorset, and he and his wife started a button company at that point based on what he remembered from the soldiers. So at the time, the Dorset buttons were called Dorset knobs, and they were not flat the way Dorset buttons are today. This is what Dorset buttons look like. Now, I've done them in various colors, but you can see they're kind of flat, just like a normal button. But back then, they were called high tops or button knobs or Dorset knobs, and they had a crest to the top of them. They looked like little miniature bundt cakes is kind of what they reminded me of. They're not made much anymore at all. But he started running this as a cottage industry to the other people who lived in Dorset at the time. They used little rings that were made of sheep horn. Today we would use these plastic rings. But back then they didn't have the plastic rings, so they used sheep horn, and they were cut into rings. In 1713, Abraham Case's grandson started using, instead of the sheep horn rings, he started using metal rings. And he employed children and adults to do, this is prior to the Industrial Revolution. So children would twist the metal into the ring shape, and those kids were called twisters. And then there were dippers who would actually solder the rings together. And then there were stringers who would string the rings into bundles that were then sent out to be produced into the buttons. Now, there were different grades of buttons at the time. Just like buttons come on a card now, they came on a card back then, but the color of the card determined the quality of the button. So the finest quality buttons were on a pink card, and the dark blue background or card were domestic quality, and then your cheapest, lowest quality buttons were on a yellow card. A good button maker could produce up to 72 buttons per day, and they earned 3 shillings for that. Buttons sold per dozen for anywhere from 8 pence to 3 shillings. By the end of the 1700s, over 4,000 people were making Dorset buttons in their homes as a cottage industry. The craft peaked in the 1820s, just prior to the Industrial Revolution. It's now considered an endangered heritage craft. So it's something that it's a skill that's being gradually lost. So with that, let's get started with making our Dorset buttons. Now, supplies you are going to need for a Dorset button are going to be a cabon, which is just simply a plastic ring. This one is a 1-inch, which are the easiest to find. However, they do come in different sizes. And for demonstration purposes, I'm going to be using a 3-inch one, just so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. You will need a darning needle, some scissors, and some thread. Now, I'm using crochet cotton thread. However, you could use embroidery floss, or you could use like a thin lace weight or fingering weight yarn. Any of those would work. So the first part that I'm going to be doing is called casting. Now you're going to cut a good length of thread. If you're making a 1-inch button, you're going to cut probably about a 4-foot piece of thread. And so that you don't have a knot, you're going to fold the yarn or thread in half. So you will have a loop on one end, and your other end will be the two ends of the string or yarn. This is the end that you want to thread through the needle, is the two ends. The reason is you're going to create a slip knot so that you don't have a knot in your button itself. So your first step is you are going to bring your needle up through the center of the ring, and you'll see here is the end of my thread right here, getting ready to come up through the center. I'm going to then take my needle and go down through the loop and draw it tight. So you can see right here it is pulling tight. It now is a slip knot, so it's not going anywhere, but I don't have an actual knot itself. Now I'm going to continue to repeat this process. This is called casting. I go up through the center, pull the thread through, but not all the way. Once I get close to where this loop is, I go down through the loop. And again, it creates a slip knot. And then I snug it up against the next stitch from before. So let's do it again. We go up through the center and down through the loop. You can see that I'm pushing them together as I go, and you're going to have these little like ridges at the edge where the actual slip knot is. So let's do a few more of these. Again, up through the center, down through the loop portion. And snug it up against the other stitches. Up through the center, down through the loop, and snug it up to the next stitch. And you're going to continue to do this until you've completely filled your ring all the way around. So if you want to pause the video now until you can get this all done, then come back and we'll go to the next step. This next portion is called slicking. Now if you're looking at your ring, you will see that that ridge that I talked about is kind of wound and twisted all the way around. So you can see mine like runs all the way around like this. You're going to take these and you just want to twist them so they're to the back of the button, so that the ridge isn't showing. There we go. And this is called slicking, and here's what the back now looks like. You can see this ridge running all around the back. You can see this is the tail from casting the stitches on, and don't worry about that, that's going to get incorporated into the button itself. Now I'm going to begin with another piece of yarn or string. You want it to be between 4 and 6 feet long, and you're going to fold it in half again, and you're going to thread it the same way with the ends going through the needle and the loop at the other end. And again, we're going to create a slip knot by doing the same method. We're just going to go up. We're just going to go up through the center, grab through the loop, and pull it snugly. The next portion of the button is called laying. What we're going to do is we're going to make this look almost like a wagon wheel. So we're going to take this portion that we've just attached. It's going to come from the back. You're going to wrap it directly in half. So if you're looking at your circle, it's going to be directly in the center. Bring it around the back and move slightly to the left. And again, you're going to wrap it directly in half. Bring it around again. Move it. Try to keep these spokes. These are like spokes of a wheel. You want to make sure they stay fairly even. Okay, my button is now completely wrapped. I'm holding it tightly here at the end. Now on a 1-inch button, you will probably have 6 to 8 spokes. This one, of course, is a 3-inch, so I'm going to have more spokes. Now we want to create a center hub, just like the wheel of a wagon wheel. We're going to have a center hub. So in order to do that, I'm coming off of this wrap right here. I want to go directly across, which is right here. So I'm going to go up between these two spokes, pull it snugly, and I'm going to go down to the spokes, in between the spokes, directly across. And hold it tightly, and then I'm going to move to the next spoke in between, come up, again pull it snugly, and go down through the hub directly across. Go up through the one hub, come down through the one that is directly opposite, and you're going to go all the way around until you have covered all of the spokes. I now have a center hub, I have spokes, and then I have this outer rim. So the portion we just finished doing was called laying. And the last portion that we do, where we actually begin weaving and filling in the center of this, is called rounding, because you're working from the center hub around all the way till you reach the outer edge. Now what we're going to do that is you're going to have some more threads. You can change colors. You know, they do not need to be all in one color. As you can see, I've done these different buttons in different colors. You can add beading at this time if you wanted to put beads in there. We're just going to keep going in the color that I am using. So let's get started. You're going to pick a spoke to start on. So I'm going to come up through this spoke right here. It's kind of at the 12 o'clock position. And I'm going to come up through it I'm going to go down to the left of it, like that. And then I'm going to move to the right, and I'm going to come up through the next spoke here, but I'm going to be coming on the underside. So I tend to look at these, the right side and the left side of each spoke. So I have just completed this one. Now I'm going to move to the one next to it to the right. I'm going to come up on the right side of that spoke. I'm going to go down on the left side of that spoke. And then I'm going to move to the next spoke here from the underside. I'm going to come up on the right. I'm going to go down on the left. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way around. Now, to make this a little easier for you to see, I'm going to do this demonstrating it with my fingers. If you think of my hand as the hub and these as the spokes, you're actually individually wrapping each of the spokes. I'm coming up on the right side of the spoke and coming down on the right. Then I'm going to this spoke. I'm coming up on the right, wrapping it and going down on the left. Moving to this spoke, and I'm going up on the right, down on the left. Moving to this spoke, I'm going up on the right, down on the left. Moving to this spoke, up on the right, down on the left. So you can see it is literally circling each of the spokes. So that is what you're going to be continuing to do all the way along your button until you've completely filled in the center and you are all the way at the edge. So if you want to pause the video now and fill in the rest of your button, you can do so, and then we'll come back at the very end. So here is our completed Dorset button. Now I will say that the smaller buttons are easier. Trying to keep the hub in the center was difficult to do. But here it is. And here's what the back looks like. It's definitely more woven looking on the back. And like I've said before in the beginning, this is a 3-inch button. So the normal size that you would be making would be a 1 inch to a 1.5 at the most. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you have, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget that I have a regular Saturday and Wednesday podcast, and I'd love to have you come over and join me. Thanks a lot for watching.